Ibrahim Traoré just unveiled Africa's first locally made advanced aircraft, and now even the West wants in. In a move that has shocked the aviation world, President Ibrahim Traoré has officially launched the first fully African-made airplane built proudly in Burkina Faso. With sleek design, powerful engines, and next-generation tech, this aircraft is one of the most advanced ever seen on the continent. The historic launch ceremony took place in Ouagadougou, where thousands gathered to witness the unveiling. Engineers, pilots, government officials, and ordinary citizens all stood in awe as the plane lifted into the skies for its first official test flight. It flew smoothly, quietly, and powerfully, sending a loud message to the world. Africa is no longer waiting, it's innovating. Early reports say the aircraft includes advanced fuel efficiency systems for long-range travel, smart navigation powered by AI, lightweight durable materials designed to last, and features rivaling and even surpassing popular Western models. The West is panicking. Sources reveal that several European and American aviation companies have already reached out, seeking to buy or partner with the Burkina Faso government to access the new tech. But insiders say Traoré isn't easily moved by Western offers. He wants this victory to remain in African hands and benefit the African people first. In his speech, Traoré said, "For too long we've watched the skies while others flew. Today, we take flight with our own wings, our own minds, our own hands." This is not just for Burkina Faso, this is for all of Africa. The launch has become a symbol of African pride, independence, and unstoppable innovation. Social media is exploding with support. Videos of the takeoff are going viral across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Many are calling this moment Africa's Wright brothers moment. Meanwhile, Western leaders are scrambling to understand how Burkina Faso, under sanctions and pressure, managed to develop something this advanced, this quickly. Some insiders suspect support from China and Russia played a role in providing technical and financial backing, a partnership Traoré has been quietly building behind the scenes. Whatever the case, Africa has taken off, and there's no turning back.
No one believed it until the tarp fell. On a forgotten runway outside Ouagadougou, something happened that the world never saw coming. As the morning sun scorched the horizon, military trucks lined the field. The crowd stood frozen, cameras zoomed in, tension thickened, and then he walked out. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, calm, controlled, determined. He didn't speak, he didn't smile, he just moved, straight toward the future. In front of him stood a massive shape under a military-grade tarp. Everyone knew something was coming, but no one imagined this. With one sharp gesture, the cover was yanked away, and the earth stood still. A full-sized airplane gleamed under the African sun, draped in the red, green, and gold of Burkina Faso. A real plane, built in Africa, born in defiance. The crowd erupted. Tears, fists in the air, knees hitting the ground. It wasn't just metal and engines. It was a message. Africa no longer crawls. We fly. This wasn't second-hand junk from Paris. This wasn't charity from Washington. This wasn't leased pride. This was 100% Burkinabe power. Designed, built, and unveiled under Western radar. For decades, they told us we couldn't. They laughed when we tried, they sabotaged when we dreamed, and yet, here it was, proof that we no longer need permission. Traoré walked up to the aircraft like a general approaching his flagship. He placed his hand on the body and stared down the cameras. His words, "This is our new beginning. Africa will fly with or without you." They laughed. They called him a dreamer. Some said it was impossible, others whispered he'd never live to see it happen. But while the world mocked, Traoré was building, not in Paris, not in Washington, But in the heart of Africa, hidden deep inside a restricted zone outside Ouagadougou, surrounded by fences, drones, and silence, a secret facility, a ghost project, a silent revolution in metal and fire. There were no press releases, no IMF contracts, no Western partners, just a handful of engineers, soldiers, and foreign technicians, handpicked, loyal, invisible. They worked at night. Blueprints were printed underground. Materials came in crates with no labels, routed through 4 different countries. Every move hidden from foreign satellites. Every part tracked by soldiers sworn to secrecy. The brains behind the wings? A coalition the West never saw coming. Burkina engineers trained in Moscow. Aviation experts flown in quietly from Iran. North Korean metallurgists, masters of stealth design. Together they formed a triangle of resistance, anti-Western, pro-sovereignty, and untraceable. And the funds? Not a dollar came from the World Bank, no strings from the EU. The financing was pure, African gold. Traoré diverted mining revenues from corrupt intermediaries and funneled it straight into this project. No middlemen, no debt, no compromise. Months passed. The structure took shape. First a cockpit, then the wings, then the roar of an African-made engine echoing through the hangar for the first time in history. No Western nation believed it was possible, and that was the plan all along. Build it in silence, launch it in shock. Traoré's order was clear. Do not announce it. Let them find out when it's already in the sky. And that's exactly what happened. By the time Western intelligence caught a whiff of what was coming, the plane was already taxiing toward takeoff. The news hit like a lightning bolt. Within minutes of the unveiling, images of the plane exploded across African social media. Twitter lit up. TikTok danced with celebration. And across the continent, one message echoed louder than all others. We built it ourselves. From Dakar to Kinshasa, from Bamako to Nairobi, people took to the streets, dancing, clapping, crying, not because it was just a plane, but because it was proof. Proof that Africa can build, innovate, and rise without begging. In Ghana, students waved Burkina flags from university rooftops. In Mali, crowds gathered outside radio stations, chanting Traoré's name. In Niger, local newspapers called it the dawn of a new African era. Even in South Africa, politicians congratulated Burkina Faso for what they called the most defiant act of technological sovereignty since decolonization. But while Africa celebrated, the West froze. At Boeing's headquarters in the US, internal memos warned of an emerging nationalist tech bloc in Africa. Airbus executives reportedly held a closed-door emergency meeting in Toulouse, and in Paris, silence, deafening silence. The French media didn't know how to cover it. Le Monde cautiously called it symbolic. BFM TV labeled it unexpected. But behind closed doors, the tone was different. A leaked French defense report described the event as a geopolitical rupture. Washington wasn't any calmer. US intelligence flagged the aircraft's technology as non-Western origin. Analysts raised alarms. Could this be the first of many? What happens if Mali builds the next one? What if a unified African aerospace project emerges? Funded outside the IMF, trained outside NATO, and aligned with Moscow or Pyongyang. The panic was real. Because this wasn't just a plane, it was a declaration. Africa is no longer your playground. And Traoré, he didn't blink, he didn't respond. He simply watched the reactions pour in and began planning the next launch. This plane is not just about metal, fuel, and flight. It's about dignity. It's about a continent reclaiming what was stolen, mocked, and ignored for generations. Because for over a century, Africa was told to wait, told to borrow, told to beg for planes, for engineers, for access to the skies. Every African airport echoed with the sound of foreign-built aircraft. Every aviation deal came with conditions, with debt, with dominance. But today, that chain was broken, not with words, but with wings. Traoré's plane isn't a product, it's a message. To the West, we no longer need your permission to rise. To the African youth, you are not too poor to build, you are too powerful to stay small. To the world, this is only the beginning. This wasn't just a Burkina achievement, it was Pan-African. Because every African saw themselves in that aircraft. Every child who ever dreamed of flying, every student studying science with no lab, every young mind told they were too poor, too black, too African to create. This was for them. And the fear it sparked in Western boardrooms wasn't just about competition, it was about control slipping away. Because if Burkina Faso can build a plane, Mali can build the next one, Niger can build the engines, Chad can mine the rare metals, Guinea can finance it with gold, and suddenly the entire model of dependency collapses. That's the true terror behind this moment. It wasn't the plane's altitude, it was its symbolism. A once colonized nation now touching the skies on its own terms. And that's why the launch rattled the world, because this isn't about aviation, it's about awakening. And once a people remember how to fly, there's no bringing them back to the ground. You didn't think the West would just sit and watch, did you? Long before the unveiling, before the engines ever roared, they knew something was happening. Satellite images showed strange construction near Ouagadougou. Unusual shipments were flagged. Metal alloys, aviation-grade wiring, encrypted comms. But there was no paperwork, no Western contractors, no IMF trace. That's when the quiet war began. It started with businessmen from Europe showing up unannounced, offering partnerships to Burkina engineers. Their offers were slick, their smiles rehearsed, but they asked too many questions. 2 weeks later, they vanished. Then came the cyber attacks. Burkina Faso's aviation servers were hit with repeated breaches. Blueprints scrambled, emails intercepted. But Traoré had anticipated this. He had his team working offline, in isolated facilities with no internet and no foreign access. No leak, no breach, no chance. But the most dangerous move came just days before the launch. 2 French nationals were arrested outside the restricted facility. They claimed to be energy consultants, but in their bags, miniature surveillance drones, encrypted flash drives, thermal scopes, and a laptop loaded with reconnaissance data. They weren't consultants, they were operatives. Burkina intelligence tracked their communications back to a private firm linked to a former European intelligence agency. Their mission was simple: locate the prototype, sabotage it before takeoff, film the failure, sell the story that Africa still can't build. They failed, because Traoré didn't just build a plane, he built a wall of silence, loyalty, and discipline around it. The spies were exposed, the facility was locked down, the engine was tested one final time, and when the aircraft finally rolled onto the runway, the entire world knew. They tried to stop it, but they were too late. That plane didn't just survive sabotage, it defied a system built to ensure it never existed. To the untrained eye, it looks like a civilian aircraft, a sleek, elegant bird painted in Burkina colors, gliding across the runway like any other. But those who know better. This plane wasn't just built to fly, it was built to defend, to monitor, to fight if necessary. Behind its graceful exterior lies something far more serious, a modular internal system designed by ex-military engineers. Removable seating, reinforced undercarriage, a rear bay compatible with light surveillance gear or cargo deployment. In short, this isn't just a statement of independence, it's a potential weapons platform, and that's what keeps the West up at night. Because this wasn't built in Boeing's labs, it wasn't approved by NATO, it didn't pass through the eyes of the Pentagon. It was born outside the system, outside their control. Sources say Russian defense specialists quietly reviewed the aircraft's specs. Iranian consultants suggested modifications for high-altitude endurance. Even whispers from North Korea hinted at stealth enhancements that could allow radar evasion for border patrol or night missions. Is it an attack aircraft? Not yet. But can it become one? Absolutely. And here's the nightmare scenario for Western powers. A Burkina Bay-made fleet patrolling AES airspace. No need for French drones. No need for US satellite access. Total control over airspace, borders, and mineral zones. Imagine Traoré deploying 5 of these along Burkina's northern frontier, watching, recording, striking if necessary. No Western approval, no partnerships, no strings. That's not just independence, that's sovereignty with teeth. The West isn't afraid of the aircraft's altitude, they're afraid of its implications. Because once Africa can defend its skies, it doesn't need foreign boots on its soil ever again, and that is what truly terrifies them. The unveiling was just the beginning. As journalists scrambled for headlines and analysts tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed, Traoré was already 3 steps ahead. Because for him, this wasn't about showing off a single aircraft. This was about lighting a fire, a pan-African aerospace revolution. At the post-launch briefing, he didn't speak like a president. He spoke like a builder, a planner, a man who came with blueprints, not just speeches. He revealed what few were prepared to hear: a national aerospace development program, a training institute for young African engineers, a research lab focused on propulsion, stealth tech, and drone systems, a satellite partnership deal in negotiation with unnamed allies, and the best part, it would be funded without a single euro from the IMF. No loans, no debts, no signatures in Brussels or Washington, just raw capital from Africa's gold, manganese, and rare earths, finally used for Africa's future, not exported for foreign profit. Within hours of the announcement, applications flooded in. Young Burkina Bay scientists from Europe ready to return home. Malian programmers, Togolese mechanics, Rwandan mathematicians, they all wanted in, because they didn't just see an aircraft, they saw a movement. For the first time, African talent wasn't being poached, it was being called back, and this time, not to serve under Western flags, but to build under their own. Traoré's words rang across the room. We don't just want to fly, we want to build the wings, the engines, the future. This wasn't about matching the West. It was about outgrowing the need to compare, about becoming something different, something sovereign, something unstoppable. The vision is clear now. Burkina Faso isn't launching a plane, it's launching a generation. It's not the plane. That's what they won't say out loud. But what every strategist in Paris and Washington already knows. It's not the engine. It's not the wingspan. It's not the aircraft specs on paper. It's the message it sends. Because what happened in Ouagadougou wasn't just a technical feat. It was an ideological earthquake, a rupture in control, a crack in the colonial mirror that told Africa, you'll always need us. France isn't afraid Burkina Faso built a plane. France is afraid that Mali is next, that Niger follows, that Guinea launches its own defense drones, that Congo funds aerospace labs with cobalt revenue instead of exporting it raw, that the dominoes begin to fall, not in chaos, but in calculated, sovereign defiance. Because if one African country can do it, what's stopping the others? That's the real terror in Western intelligence briefings. The fear that this moment becomes a model, that Traoré becomes a blueprint for every African leader tired of begging, that the idea of self-reliance stops being a slogan and starts becoming an industry. And they know their old tricks won't work this time. They can't issue sanctions. It's not their funding. They can't control the narrative. African media is louder, faster, and more connected than ever. They can't sabotage forever, because African leaders are now watching each other's backs. And the US? It's not just worried about Africa drifting away. It's worried about Africa building its own center of gravity, outside NATO, outside the dollar, outside the influence of Washington think tanks. A new world is being born, and the old masters weren't invited. So yes, they'll downplay the launch, call it symbolic, call it premature, call it unstable. But behind closed doors, they're scrambling, because they see the writing on the wall. Africa is no longer asking. Africa is building, and there's no turning back. The heat was heavy. The sun blazed high over Ouagadougou's skies, but no one moved, no one blinked, because he was about to speak. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, not as a soldier this time, not even as a president. He stood there as a symbol of something greater. A continent refusing to kneel. Behind him, the aircraft stood proud, still glistening from its unveiling. The cameras zoomed in. Microphones leaned closer. The world waited. And then, in a voice calm but thunderous, Traoré began. For too long we have flown in borrowed planes, wearing borrowed dreams, guided by borrowed hands. Today, we break that chain. This is not just a machine. This is our declaration. We will no longer be passengers. We will be the pilots of our own future. The silence that followed was brief. Then the eruption came. A roar like thunder swept through the crowd. AS! 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 Tens of thousands, fists in the air, chanting the name of the alliance that now represented more than defense. It represented destiny. Mothers cried, veterans saluted, children climbed on shoulders screaming, "We can fly now!" Across the tarmac, soldiers banged their rifles against their chests in rhythm with the chant. Even the technicians, still wearing grease-stained overalls, stood side by side, tears running down their faces. It wasn't just pride, it was liberation. Traoré raised his hand again, but not for silence. He pointed to the sky. "This is where we belong," he said, "and nothing will bring us back to the ground." In that moment, the aircraft's engine fired once more, not to take off, but to remind the world, Africa is alive, alert, and airborne. And across the continent, from radio stations to refugee camps, that message echoed. We built it. We flew it. We're not coming down. The dust hadn't even settled. Reporters were still filing stories. Analysts were still arguing on TV. But in a quiet, undisclosed hangar outside Ouagadougou, another aircraft was already taking shape. Because Traoré never planned to stop at one. The unveiling wasn't the finale, it was the signal. Inside the facility, blueprints of a second, more advanced model, larger wingspan, higher altitude capacity, dual-use modules, civilian and military. Rumors swirl of stealth coating being tested under Russian guidance. North Korean engineers are said to be consulting remotely on radar suppression tech. It's happening again, and this time, faster. But with momentum comes danger. Western satellites have increased flyovers of the region. French drones were spotted near the border. Monitoring, they claim. Burkina air defenses were scrambled twice in 1 week. Intelligence reports speak of foreign operatives entering neighboring countries. Traoré's inner circle has tripled security because everyone knows they won't let this happen twice. There are whispers of attempted cyber attacks, of backdoor deals, of bribes offered to turn engineers. None have worked, yet. But the message is clear. The fight has just begun. because now it's no longer about one plane. It's about what comes next. AES states discussing a joint aerospace command, plans for a regional manufacturing hub, scholarships for African youth to study aerospace in Pyongyang, Moscow, Tehran, discussions of an African satellite constellation independent from Western systems. This is the future they fear, an Africa that builds, defends, watches the skies on its own terms. And Traoré? He doesn't flinch. He knows the risk. He knows what's coming, but he also knows the truth. The moment you fly once, they can never convince you to crawl again. The engines are warming, the blueprints are ready, the skies are waiting. Africa has taken off, and the world can't stop it now.